Howdy, all. I have to say I'm a little surprised that the team that I talk about and supposedly a fan of in the NFL is actually doing something positive. Which Russ, that means that in the next they'll probably the Buffalo Bills are 5-2, which means they'll probably end up 5-11.
No, I mean, but they won't because there's just too many bad teams in that division, Mike. It's math. If you do math, they're going to probably be okay.
Well, the Atlanta Falcons lost to everybody in the division except the Jets.
Right.
So, but I know that a Jet fan that who works for HockeyBuzz, Noel Fogelman, he basically said the season is on track now that the Jets have lost a couple in a row.
Well, here's the funny thing about it. They're 0.1% of getting the top overall pick, and they're 0.1% of making the playoffs. If that's not odds for the Jets, I don't know what is.
Well, how are things going in Detroit Lions land, Kevin?
Well, I think everybody was disappointed by that loss last night. The season started with such promise at 3-1, and now the team is 3-4, and that game was winnable against the Steelers. And when you watch that game last night, I think it really brings home we talk about parity all the time in the NHL, but in the NFL, there's just a lot of sameness. There's a lot of teams that are a lot alike, and like the Lions could have easily won that game, even though the Steelers had the better running back. The Lions don't have any running attack at all. The Steelers' defense is better, but the Lions played well. I mean, it was actually an entertaining game for a while.
Yeah, and also entertaining last night. I actually didn't catch a lot of the football game. I was concentrating more on the World Series, and you can't blame me when the game ends up 12-12 in extra innings. And obviously Bregman with the hit in the 10th inning to give the Astros a 3-2 lead in the series. Now we're all baseball fans. Kevin, honestly, 13-12. It's like the ball has been injected with some sort of like helium or something like that. This is not baseball. I sort of jokingly said, what happened to the pitcher's duel? I mean, I'm not a purist. I love the home run, but that game at points was ridiculous. A 7-4 lead gone, 11-8 gone. It never ended.
Over 100 postseason homers. It's a little crazy.
Well, it is odd, but and Russ isn't quite old enough to sort of have all the years that I do. But I've gone through this now a bunch of times with the juiced up ball idea, and I get it. I mean, it is odd to have so many home runs and guys with career home runs numbers this season. There's been a lot of talk about it, and Verlander coming out and saying what he did.
What do you think about that, Kev? I mean, you've probably dealt with Verlander a little bit, or at least have been in the same city. Yeah. He's a pretty straight shooter, right?
Oh, for sure. That's the point I was just about to make, that if Verlander says it, then, he believes it. And the only argument for let's not get too carried away is, you still got to hit the ball.
Yes.
I get it that some people think that the ball is juiced, and maybe it is. I don't have any evidence either way, and the numbers suggest that something is happening. But regardless, I mean, these guys are having to make the contact, and I think this whole launch angle thing, that clearly had a difference.
It did. I mean, there's a lot of uppercutting. There's no question about it.
And I think home runs beget more home runs because. Everybody saw that J.D. Martinez, who, I don't know if he was the absolute first, but he certainly was one of the first that adjusted his swing, and he turned himself into a monstrous offensive force. And then you started to see, and then there's so much discussion about the launch angles. And now I find it, I just laugh that they've got it figured out to, what your launch angle has to be and your bat speed, and if you do that, you're going to hit a home run. Like it's just a given. If you
there are a couple things though. The first one is getting past that. One of the great things about baseball was the other night when Houston was getting blown out. Bregman hit a home run off of Jansen, and a light went on for me. Like he sees something there, and maybe that's going to pay dividends. And it did pay dividends last night. because he went down and got a ball that probably a lot of guys would let go, but he knew he'd hit him before, and he ends up getting the key hit. And that's the great thing about baseball. Even in a meaningless game, when you match up in a 7-game series, those little things start to add up. But the other thing is, from the pitching aspect, when you get squeezed on the strike zone like the pitchers were, it's impossible even for a Clayton Kershaw to have a good game, Kev.
Well, although, the one thing that I've said during this sort of explosiveness, isn't it about time that, the hitters are getting celebrated? Like, when we've seen the change in the game, the evolution to the point where you're facing a fresh 95 mile per hour plus pitcher every inning. We're starting now in the 5th and 6th innings to add these guys, and it's a new pitcher, and you're not getting that third time through the lineup anymore with starters. So these hitters are facing 95 and above, no reaction time at all.
Well, I actually think that the fact that everybody throws 95 to 100 now makes, not to say that anybody can hit it, but I think it makes it easier for these players to hit. Like, I remember during the year, Devers, the rookie third baseman for the Red Sox, hits a 102 mile an hour fastball from Aroldis Chapman to tie the game for the Red Sox, and it was like it was nothing because they face 95, 97, 98 every single day. It's more now that the guy who's unusual like Uehara for Boston, or a guy who throws off speed like Keuchel all the time and picks the corners. Those guys are tougher because they're not prototypical. Everybody throws 95 now. Yeah,
no, that's right. And the pitchers are supplying some of the power that's killing them.
Yeah. If I'm AJ Hinch, though, Kev, I don't know about you, but if I'm AJ Hinch, when I give Verlander the ball, I'm like, it's your game. You're going 9.
Well, he probably has to because his bullpen is spent. He's not going to go. He's not going to go to Giles. And just going back on the whole juice ball thing, if I needed any convincing, last night in the 9th inning when Yasiel Puig hits a 2-run home run with one hand.
Yeah.
He got into the third row in left field. I'm sorry. I don't care how good his swing. I don't care what his launch angle is. That's ridiculous.
I'll give you the quote of the night. It was on Twitter. It was from Jose Canseco. I'll clean it up. But he basically said that the ball on the field had more juice than his own personal set.
I knew he was going there even before he good old.
But honestly, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it is juice. Like, it's not like when the Dodgers are batting, they have an unjuiced ball, and when the Astros are batting, we have a juice ball. I mean, does it really matter if we get a bunch of runs? Like, they're still playing the game. I mean, it's not like we're not going to ever get any pitchers duels ever again.
No. But I think with this, let's just say this: I'd be surprised if Game 6 is not like a 8-7 or a 9-8 game, because these bullpens are so spent right now. I mean, Russ is right that Verlander is going to have to stick in there probably for 7 or 8 innings, even if he doesn't have his own stuff, simply for. Right. The fact that they've used Peacock, they've used Davinsky, they've used all their guys in their bullpen. They won't use Giles because he's a gas can. So that's the thing. It's a very interesting series, and we're going to get to talking to hockey now. But it was such a monumental game last night. I thought we had to really talk about it.
I think the series has been highly entertaining.
Yeah, it's been great. No, it's been a great series.
I don't know why everybody's complaining about it. I mean, it's been fun. Like, to watch this, what's happening out there, the ability to come back. If you don't have a horse in the race, what you want is the back and forth, and we've seen the series. So
some people want revenge for a Game 7 loss. That would be me. I'm rooting for the Dodgers. Anyway, hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, October 30th, 2017.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, USA Today Sports.
I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, we've had a pretty interesting weekend. We're going to talk about, some general things in the league, but specifically because it's been brought up off and on over the last week, the situation with Vegas and Vadim Shipachev. It's sort of coming to a head. Now, Shipachev was assigned to the American Hockey League Chicago Wolves. At first, he reported. Now he is left the team, and now he's been suspended. Kevin, it sounds to me, I mean, first of all, 3 games. They made a decision on this guy after 3 games, which just seems to me a little bit hasty. But the way it's sounding right now, and there's been some reports out of Russia that, they're, I know a SCOP, St. Petersburg, issued a statement, basically saying, well, we can't talk to him because he's under an NHL contract. But if he's not under an NHL contract, then maybe, it was sort of half and half. What's your read on this situation?
Well, what happened was on this is initially he was sent down because it was a numbers thing. They really didn't want to give up any assets. They didn't want to put guys through waivers with the, what the thought is that they would lose them, and they really wanted to get something for all the assets. I mean, they wanted to take advantage of the advantage they were given, through this more liberal expansion draft rules that has sort of given them this team. But I think what happened is the Golden Knights have been much better than anyone anticipated they would be. And when he got up, they didn't see that he was adding to the mix. And, they're going to go with the horses that they, believe that have been pretty productive. And I think that's where we're at now. And, there's a language issue as well. It just became probably more complicated to add him to the roster than to move on from this experiment. And, that's the hardest thing, I think, for all general managers is to know when, because that looked like it was going to be a great move from him for the Vegas squad. Like he was a dominant player in the KHL. And, I guess they've seen enough to think that that his skills are not going to translate well. They don't believe that moving anybody out of the mix that they now have in their top 6 makes any sense, and so they've given him permission to see what's available. And I don't think they'll give him away, but I think they'd be happy if he made a nice trade with someone.
Here's the thing, Kev. I got this in the middle of the night from a source in Russia, and one of the teams, Severstal, which is his hometown, didn't care about the NHL contract. They basically said, publicly, the coach said, come home. We invite you to join our hometown team. And the captain made his own statement. And so when you have stuff like that going on, that definitely muddies up the picture because, again, if he's feeling he doesn't love it here, he could just throw away his NHL contract and never go back to the NHL and, get paid there and just leave it all, and that would be it.
Yeah, there's ramifications there between, and not that this has stopped Russian teams before, but
right.
There are ramifications there that.
I don't think it's enough, though. I don't think it's as big a deal as we think it is.
Well, Russ, the fact is,
a guy with an NHL contract.
Russ, the fact is that there's ramifications inside the KHL because his hometown team doesn't own his rights. They would have to, and maybe,
I mean, all right. So you really think at the end of the day that's going to be the big log jam here? Is that going to figure that out? No.
But they are trying to sort of clean up everything in the KHL, and there is a relationship between the NHL and the KHL. Now, saying that, I get your point because that hasn't stopped Russian teams in the past. Like,
sure.
The leverage that the NHL has over all the countries is less with Russia than any other of the countries. Like, Sweden is careful, Finland is careful what they do in terms of dealing with NHL teams. Russia has never been careful.
Right.
So, who knows? I mean,
you know what else? If they feel like he's a key component to their possible Olympic team, they're gonna push it.
Well, but see, again, like now there's a leverage that the NHL, could exert. Would the IIHF allow him to play?
I don't know.
Yeah, he has a valid NHL contract,
but right now the NHL is not in the Olympics, so I wonder if they'll use that as
but the relationship between the IIHF and the World Championships. What if the NHL said, you honored this contract, you're not going to get a single NHL player to go to the World Championships?
That's possible.
And don't put that past the NHL.
No. All of it's possible. It's all possible.
And the same thing with with Russia. If the KHL allowed this, would the NHL say to the Russian Hockey Federation, if you don't tell the KHL not to honor his contract, then we won't release any of the players for the World Championship. So
I mean, the best case scenario for George McPhee is a contract termination and him going back to the KHL. It saves him $7 million in salary over the next year and 3 quarters, and that would clear an obvious mistake because they signed him 2 years, $9 million on the assumption he would be one of their better forwards, and so far, I mean, it looks like a pretty big mistake. But if that happens, then he'll be happy, and then maybe Shipachyov will be happy going back to Russia. But right now, I mean, this is to me, it's a little bit of an embarrassment everything is going great with Vegas right now. Everything is.
Oh, come on, Mike!
It's not that big a deal.
God, you're looking for something if you say that. I mean, come on.
It's not that big a deal.
I mean, they brought a guy in. Hasn't worked out. I mean, to call that an embarrassment, I mean, it's a miscalculation. How about that? Well, yeah, but yeah, sure it is. I mean, but it's the same thing with the Penguins. They bring in the Emmy. It didn't work out. So does that mean that Rutherford is a poor general manager? No, he just guessed wrong.
Right.
Same thing with Vegas. To be honest with you, I'm not so convinced that if he had come in with another team, like under more normal circumstances, probably would have worked. Expansion team, he would come in, he could have been the number 1 center. But this team turned out to be better.
Right.
Right.
They thought. So,
I thought the funniest thing when all the machinations began to happen with Shipachyov, that Mark Bergevin, the Montreal Canadiens general manager, came out and said, we're not interested in him, because right now, if you ask the fan base in Montreal, they're ready to do almost anything to get that team off of the out of the crash dive that they're going.
Yeah,
in.
but if you let the fans run the Canadians, they've never going to come up again.
I know that very well, Russ, because I mean, hell, the fans and the criticism in the media probably ran the Toronto Maple Leafs for a lot of the last couple decades, unless they had strong general managers in place. So that I'm used to that. But I mean, we know that Montreal is struggling right now, Kevin. They did win over the weekend in beating another struggling team, but whenever they seem to put one good effort in front, they beat Florida, they come out the next game and I thought played terribly against the LA Kings. They just can't seem to get things rolling.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the alarming thing from my perspective about what's happened with the Canadiens is I think everybody in hockey knew that they had not addressed the scoring issue, but that's not been all of their problem. Defensively, I remember seeing a quote coming out of the Canadiens that the thought was that this defensive group could be better than last year's defensive group, and it certainly has not.
Right.
And that to me has been the bigger issue. And they just seem like they're not on the same page, and that's really shocking given Claude Julien's history of being such an excellent defensive coach. And no matter what roster he's had in the past, he's found a way to keep his team competitive with good, strong team defense. And I don't see that. And I think it's Carey Price has not been himself. They've just essentially had everything kind of go wrong. And this is a pretty unforgiving NHL these days. When you've got like improved teams in both the Atlantic and in the Metropolitan, that does not help the cause either, because you're competing against an improved Devils team, you compete against an improved Carolina team. The Flyers are a little better, their defense is maybe a little farther ahead than people would have expected. There's a lot of growth and improvement in the Eastern Conference there, and that doesn't have the Canadiens either.
Russ, I mean, the warning signs were there for Montreal in the preseason because I got to see them twice. And and I'm not casting any kind of aspersions against Victor Mete, because I think he's a good young defenseman. But the fact that he had to make that team, because he's probably one of the only guys that can that has the speed to advance the puck.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a group of Petrie. I mean, Shea Weber is a great defenseman, but Petrie and Jordy Ben, a lot of bigger. Carl Alsner is not known as a puck rusher. This all the same type of defenseman, and they didn't see this coming, and they had to basically insert a 19-year-old rookie, a 4th-round pick, because he could skate.
Yeah, I mean, it is one aspect of it. Like, I saw it coming in Edmonton. I probably wasn't paying enough attention in Montreal to see it, the same situation where they have very similar defensemen. So, yeah, I mean, right now they're in that spot, and they don't really have anybody they can call up that's going to change it. You can't really trade for anybody that's going to change it unless you're going to make a major trade, which they're running out of assets. Let's face it. I mean, so right now they're going to have to figure it out. This is why they have Claude Julien. Claude Julien's going to have to figure it out. That's going to make his job a little tougher. Yeah,
and like Kevin said, I mean, Carey Price has been pedestrian. He's one of the best goalies in the league, and he normally
that's the problem.
Yeah, he normally covers up a lot of their blemishes, and he hasn't been able to do that. And once he gets back to being Carey Price, then maybe they're an above 500 team. But at this point, Kevin, they're digging themselves a hole. I mean, they're 3-7-2 right now.
Yeah,
we know the way the league is. If you do this for maybe 15 games, there's no catching up.
I agree. I mean, I used to view it as a cliche when general managers used to say things like, well, you can't win anything in the first month, but you can sure lose the entire season. And you know what? That's it. Yeah, it may be a cliche. It's often said, but it's the truth. It's the reality. If you dig yourself a hole, because there's too many teams that are winning on a regular basis now, and it's hard to climb if you've got 5 teams between you and the playoffs. And I think they've put themselves in a spot, and the same, the Rangers are going to go through that as well unless they turn it around quickly.
Yeah, and I was going to mention the Rangers because Larry Brooks in the New York Post, I believe it was yesterday, essentially said that Alain Vigneault is on thin ice, and that the next game, if they lose, it could very well be Alain Vigneault's last game as head coach of the Rangers. Now, he's been there for a while, and Russ, you and I both thought it very conspicuous that in the offseason they brought in Lindy Ruff as an assistant coach. And as soon as I heard Ruff as an assistant coach there, I said, he's not an assistant, he's a head coach in waiting. And sure. Right now, it's very possible that they do fire Vigneault. It could be somebody else. But more than likely, if they go interim, it's going to be a guy like Lindy Ruff. But what is the reason why this team has started out so bad? Is it the center situation?
No, it's really the defense. It's not the center situation. Their offense is good enough and has enough fight in it that if they got halfway decent defense and goaltending, they'd be fine, and they'd be the team that we think they should be. The interesting thing is, you knew when Lindy was brought in that, yes, that was the looking down the road kind of thought. But now Lindy's doing a bad job in his current job. And so, is it a guarantee that they're going to hand it off to Lindy? I'd say it's still 95%, but does that cure the problem? Because unless Lindy brings in someone that really does wonders with their defense, they don't know what their defensive pairings are. And they're a mess. And D'Angelo got literally a very quick look, and they sent him out. They threw Holden in. To me, again, I'm going to go with, you should just worry about your top 4. You should go and make – and really, and I don't care what kind of ripples this sends, you make Shattenkirk a third-pairing defenseman and your top-pairing power play guy. And that's what you do. And that's his job, because otherwise Kevin Shattenkirk right now, when they try and insert him into the top 4, has failed. There's no reason they have to keep him there. It doesn't matter how much money he makes. What matters is having the best team. And so at some point, they're going to have to come to that realization too. But the Lundqvist part is, he's a guy that has to get rebounds cleared. He thinks ahead. He does make the great save. He can't glove everything. Nobody's been there to clear it for him. And when in other teams, when we've seen teams band together for that backup goalie, defense is exactly just as bad for Andrei Pavlik. So, who's really not gotten off to a good start either. But I can't even say I could even blame him just yet for his starts.
Yeah, I completely agree with Ross on that. I think this is I mean, the Rangers looked disorganized defensively. They don't look like there's any semblance of a tight system. It's very loose, and some of that is, they're integrating an important player into the back end, and he hasn't found a comfort spot yet. The problem is I think you have to sort of try to find the place where you can take advantage of the skills he brings. I mean, the reason that he's there is because he can move the puck, he can get the puck to the offense. He's very effective in that way. But Russ is also right in saying that he's been a part of the problem defensively. He has not looked good as a one-on-one defender. And the other element to this, and you're starting to see it now, it's come out, statistically, for all of the season dating back to the beginning of last season, Lundqvist's numbers have, put him in the bottom third of the league in terms of the way he has played. He has just not been the same guy. And as everyone knows who's listening to this podcast, I am a Lundqvist believer. I have felt for a long time, and it's it's interesting that in the same season, both Lundqvist and Carey Price, who I think. Price is thought to be the top goalie, but Lundqvist is always considered in the top five. Both of them, I think Lundqvist has been even worse than Price. But, that's been a big part of it. If Lundqvist could, restore his roar, and if they could just sort of get a system going defensively, like, systems are like important in this league. Like that's why Claude.
It's a major deal.
Yeah, and they I don't know what they're playing or what they're trying to accomplish, but it's pretty clear that that not everybody's on the same page. Either they haven't sort of figured out the best way to take advantage of the addition of Shattenkirk, or for whatever.
Shattenkirk's got 9 points in 12 games. In that regard, you brought him in for that. He's increased their offense, but he's hurting their defense. So you can fix that. That is fixable.
Yeah. I don't know if putting him on the third pair is the right answer, but I can see that as an option, to be sure. I mean, basically what you have to do is you have to find the best place for him to, take advantage of his offensive skill, and because you don't want to reduce his minutes to the point where he's not on the ice enough either.
No.
So it's tough, but they thought that he was going to be a good fit for McDonough, but that really hasn't worked, has it, Russ?
It hasn't worked at all. No.
Yeah. So that team still should be good enough to be beyond where they're at. Larry Brooks's report, like I tend to believe that. Like I tend to believe that Vigneault's in trouble, because you're starting to hear people say things like, that he's managing more than he's coaching, and once coaches get in that situation, that's if they don't sort of trust their coaching instincts, then you kind of wonder, what's going on there. So
what definitely matters at MSG is cash in the register, and a lot of Ranger fans are starting to stay away. There, you are, even though they had this sellout streak that's going. We kind of wonder how long that's going to keep going for. So when that starts to end, that's when Vigneault is really in trouble. And fans already are starting to have empty seats, even though the tickets are bought. Like, they're starting not to show up, and they see that, and it affects concessions. And that's where this thing is true, because, again, fan interest is important for the Rangers. They want to sell you other things, like every other hockey club. And so this could be the game. Again, I think the reason everybody's looking at this, too, is they have a day off the next day, and then whoever the coach would be, which would be Lindy, would be able to have a practice before he goes to Tampa and plays Tampa. And so I think that's why this day is being looked at, and also maybe the embarrassment of Vegas beating you at home, because Vegas has been winning all their games at home, not so much on the road.
It is funny that it is Vegas, though, eh?
Yes.
That's just almost adds to the fun of it all. So
yes.
Now, unlike Montreal and the Rangers, where, I mean, with Montreal, they're not going to fire Julian. It appears that they're not going to fire Bergevin, and they're not going to make a trade right now while everybody is, offering them their junk for, their whatever top prospects are remaining. With the Rangers, it may be a coaching change. In Buffalo, you have a new general manager, a new coach, changing over from Dan Bilesma's system to Phil Housley's system, but they're doing as badly as the Rangers. Same record, 3-7-2. They lost to San Jose on Saturday, and the video feed caught Jack Eichel leaving the ice after the loss, and he snapped the graphite twig, his stick, over his knee in frustration. Kev, with the Sabres, I think the first move, if they, and who knows if it'll be American Thanksgiving or a little after that, I think the first move will be a big trade because they have a lot of players who've been there for a few years. I don't think they're married to anybody other than Eichel and maybe one or two others. I think there'll be some significant move if they continue to struggle.
Well, what I would say is I don't think Botterill, the new general manager, is nearly as panicked as you and the fan base. Like, I don't know that he feels like he's got to, do anything immediately. I mean, there's still kind of like they should be farther along. I completely agree with you. Yeah. But like, I don't, there's still sort of a team in transition trying to sort of figure it all out with the new coach. And I think it's too soon to sort of pass judgment. Will he be looking at trades? Well, I think he'll look at trades only because I think he would do that anyway, even if the team was going well. Like, I don't see them doing anything now. I think they want to sort of figure out where they're at, and he needs some time. So, I would say let's give them another, 8 or 10 games and see where they're at. But I just don't know that they're really going to sort of react to this. Botterill's a pretty smart guy, and he's I think he's going to want to watch this team a little bit longer than so I don't see anything happen in the next 8 or 10 games.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to do anything impulsive, and I think it's mostly the fan base. I mean, I thought that the Sabres had an outside chance of being a playoff team. I like the talent on hand. I thought they improved their defense. Lehner's continues to be a question mark. He's had good games, bad games. There's no consistency in him. I mean, he's got a lot of ability, but he just doesn't seem to be able to put it together. And they've gone to Chad Johnson more than I thought that they would early on in the season. And Chad Johnson is a good backup. He's not a guy who can step in as a starter, even though he's been called to do that with his last few teams. But yeah, I think there's a level of frustration with especially with Sabres fans looking a little north at the Maple Leafs and how they turned it around so quickly. Everything in Buffalo sort of reflecting of what is going on in Toronto, and they see success in Toronto, and they're saying, "Why not us?" So that's so I think
what, and that's fair because Buffalo has Eichel. Like generally what I tell people is, well, that's true, and I'm a big believer in lauding what the Shanahan, Lamoriello, Babcock triumvirate has accomplished there because it goes well beyond Austin Matthews. But saying all that, the success, a lot of it is, they had the luck of getting the pick when Austin Matthews was available. Well, Buffalo has Eichel, and Eichel is a terrific player as well. So, I mean, that's why I said I thought they would be farther along as well. But I also don't think I think it's just kind of too early, and we just got to sort of sort it out. And I think you got to give Jason Botterill, some time. Like I like the off-season moves. Now, I did not, and I took some abuse from Buffalo fans about this. I did not see them. I didn't believe that. I did a story on the teams that did a lot in the offseason, and I ranked them, and I didn't have the Buffalo ranked in the top 5 because I just didn't think that was enough. Like like their defense was improved, but I didn't see them as going to suddenly move into the top 3 in the Atlantic Division. So
they improved their 4, 5, 6. They didn't improve the top 3.
No, that's well said. Better said than I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I continue to say Zach Bogosian is the worst bang for buck of any player in the NHL because I don't believe he's even played this year. He's been constantly hurt, and when he has played, he hasn't played well. That trade has been a pretty big disaster for the Sabres, but that was a Tim Murray deal, and Botterill shouldn't be held accountable to it. Not to dwell on the negative here, but the good stories so far are the teams that are struggling, and in the Western Conference, the Arizona Coyotes. And I thought this team was improved, but right now Rick Tocchet and the Coyotes have started 0-10-1. And Russ, they're in Philadelphia. Is it tonight or tomorrow?
Tonight.
In Philadelphia tonight. Tocchet, where Tocchet spent a lot of his career as a player. Kevin, I'm a little surprised. The addition of Yarmulson on defense. I think they solidified their defense. They are very young up front, but they have a lot of talent. The goaltending was a question mark, and it's been a problem, so much so that they traded for Wedgwood, the young goaltender who was in the New Jersey organization, for a low-round draft pick, and they waived Louis Domingue over the weekend. I mean, it's really surprising that this team is doing as badly as they are right now.
Yeah, I liked all the moves that they made in the offseason, and I thought they were going to be an improved team. I thought they could even sort of – I didn't believe they were going to get in the playoffs, but I thought they could at least make noise to get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But, you provided the answer in your, presentation of their problems, and that is their goaltending. You look at their save percentage, and I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
Ranta was at 913 when he went out with an injury, and Domingue has been, 860, 70, and it's impacted completely the way the Coyotes play. There's no doubt about that. And I think they don't have the secondary scoring has betrayed them. Like, they have none. That top line. And by the way, Clayton Keller has been phenomenal.
He's been as good as I've advertised him. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's over 5 shots per game, and the play that he made the other day. I just wrote a piece. His plus minus, as we all know, is brutal at -11. And I wrote a piece where I quoted Chaika saying, what's interesting about that, because I asked him whether or not that was a team statistic more than individual, and he said for sure. He said he's actually a very good defensive player, and he said you watch him, he's got a very active stick. And he's smart, and he positioned himself well. Well, in the next game, I believe it was against New Jersey, where he picked the play was going the other way, and they were breaking out of the New Jersey zone. Was it New Jersey? I can't remember who the player was now, but anyway, Keller was chasing him, picked his pocket, very similar to the way Pavel Datsyuk used to do it. Picked his pocket, turned it, went the other way, and scored on a breakaway. And he just has that ability. So that line of Stefan, Domi, and Keller has been a very effective line. The problem is that all those guys are small, and Chaika told me, and I wrote this, that every day they contemplate breaking up that line, and just to get greater scoring depth, because they've had so limited secondary scoring. And I think size is an issue there, and for that reason, I think they may ultimately break that line up. Like, if they could get a bigger player. Now, here's the other thing, too, which Chaika pointed out. They may consider moving Clayton Keller to center, which was his normal position kind of growing up. And
that's his main position,
Yeah, so I talked to him about that. He didn't seem to care one way or another. But, generally at that age, they're not going to really say what their preference is anyway. At least not to me, or to a reporter, I should say. This team has not nearly produced the way they did. Ekman Larson needs to be a greater force as well. He's a talented player, and they lean on him. And I get that the goaltending has been a major issue there, and I think they expect Ranta back, pretty quickly.
Yeah, Louis Domingue, 856 save percentage.
Yeah, I thought it was 860.
Yeah, Tonight, Wedgwood's going, so he'll be the 4th goalie going for Tocchet. If they lose this game in Philly, 11-1, I got to tell you, I was here when Melrose got fired the day after his loss in Philly, when Tampa was going bad, and you remember the whole Stamkos thing. This feels like the same situation, Kevin. And if he loses with his 4th different goalie, it's not going to look good. I don't know what they're going to do, but it's not going to look good.
Oh, they're not going to fire him. I don't think.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I think that they see the issue as the goaltending issue. Now, here, what I would say is, if they get Ranta back and then he can't get it done,
right?
Then we have some issues. But they really do expect that Ranta will solve a lot of their problems, that the team will get comfortable again. I mean, they're clearly playing differently if you're watching them.
They are. I still think it's a lot of eggs to put in the Ranta basket, considering he's an unproven starter.
Fair analysis, because they knew coming in, it was a nice roll of the dice. I liked the move, I really did. But they thought it's basically everybody's trying to get a Talbot. They want the guy that they who was a backup, or Darling in Carolina, and they're trying to do that as well. So.
And I saw Darling firsthand when Carolina played Toronto last Thursday, and his stats coming into the game were not great, and he'd lost to Tampa Bay the night before. He played pretty well against the Leafs. I'm still not 100% sure he's a number one goaltender, but you either draft one and develop one, and it takes 3 or 4 years, or you get somebody in their mid-20s who's been a backup, and you roll the dice, and that's what basically the NHL teams have to do. So it's really
especially the lower budget teams.
Yeah.
I mean, the Coyotes and Carolina are not cap teams, so they're trying to find the diamond in the rough, and
No, just your opinion, Kev, because I look at that situation. I look at a player like Ekman Larsson, who's been there since 2009, was drafted in the top 6 or 7 in the 2009 draft. Spent his entire career there. He's made one conference final in his entire career. He's a year away. After this year, he's a free agent the same year that Doughty and Erik Karlsson is. I don't think there's a chance that either one of those guys is leaving either Ottawa or LA, but I would think that there's a possibility that with Arizona struggling as much as they have over the last few years, that Ekman Larsson would maybe look for an opportunity to go someplace else. Do you think maybe Chaika knows that, and maybe you could see either at the deadline or over the summer him and maybe even Yarmulson, who's in the same contract situation, be moved out? Because I can't see them staying there with this team in flux.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. I don't really have an answer for that, because I think it's complicated. Like, the other element to all this is you're still trying to get a new arena there. You're still trying to win over the fan base. If you can't keep your players,
sure.
So, then, so I think they got to make every effort to get him signed. He's a very important player. If they were going to trade him, they certainly wouldn't do it at the trade deadline. But I just don't. I think they're going to try to get him signed and get him. The problem they're going to be is, can they afford to give him what he could get on the marketplace? Like, can you imagine, what he could do, in a major market? And this guy has had incredible offensive stats, and he has the potential to be a dominant Norris Trophy candidate defenseman. So, an open market, he could get a lot of money. Are the Coyotes going to be willing to pay him that? So,
well, right now the highest paid defenseman in the NHL is PK Subban at $9 million a year. I think it's a pretty safe bet that one of Karlsson, Doughty, or Ekman Larsson are going to get way more than $9 million.
Well, don't you think Karlsson's going to be up north of $10 million?
Yeah, he'll be north of $10 million.
Yeah, $11 or $12 million. Like, he's a dominant player in the game. So.
And I want to tie it in with that. I know that Russ brought this up before the show, and we wanted to talk about it. Kyle Turris is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. There's been negotiation between his agent and the Ottawa Senators. There's been no agreement. They seem to be at some sort of an impasse. Part of this, if you look at their roster situation, Mark Stone needs to be signed, and Karlsson is up after next year. He'll be eligible to be signed to a new contract on July the 1st. Kev, I think, Turris are probably, Brassard's played well, but Turris right now is their de facto number one center. And the way it looks right now, it doesn't look like they're going to sign him.
Yeah, although, historically, more players than not get signed. And, I know Dorian have been optimistic about it all. So we'll have to see. Now, earlier in the season, Darren Dreger reported, and he's pre-wired in, that there could be a trade. So I think we're going to have to sort of wait and play this out. This is why you don't want to negotiate during the season. This is why you got to get these things done, because, this Ottawa team is an interesting team, and they're a team that's designed to perform in the playoffs, and you hit the nail on the head. He's important to that. I think one of the issues there is, you got to, what's Dion Phaneuf's number at?
$7 million.
$7 million, yeah. So, if you're Kyle Turris, you're thinking, well, I'm just as valuable, probably more so than Dion Phaneuf. And, that number is sitting out there as well. But, Turris is not a 80-point scorer.
No.
But he's a 65-point guy.
He is a 65-point guy. But, what do we pay 65-point guys? We don't pay him, $10 million. We don't pay him, $9 million. So, they just got to get to that right number. But, this can't be helpful to have this ongoing, during the season.
Yeah, I just have a feeling he's going to get dealt at the deadline, whether they're in it or not, because I don't think they'll come to that number. I just think at the end of the day, Ottawa has a budget, and with the other two guys coming up down the road, they're going to have to – and they have plenty of young guys. I mean, if Colin White wasn't hurt, it wouldn't hurt as much, and that's the thing. They have Shabbat. They've got plenty of young guys they could insert in. I could just see Turris getting traded for something they need, for a guy that they can gain term on, because that's what they're going to need.
I don't know. To me, that's they could have been in the final last year.
Yeah, I know, but you can't let him walk, and there's a very good chance he would walk.
In this instance, I think it's more likely that they keep him as an own rental and let him walk, because they're so.
I don't think they're going to do that.
They're so close, and they do have youngsters that can move up in the organization. I mean, I don't think they can get somebody who can be as impactful at the deadline to help them in their playoff run for Turris. I mean, unless there's a team out,
he could end up being the deal for Matt Duchene that nobody's talking about.
Right, but the question is whether if Colorado is interested in him, and whether
if they feel like they could pay him, which they probably can, then that may be the way that deal shakes out.
Now, the other team in the West that has struggled and surprising to most is the Edmonton Oilers, because the Edmonton Oilers were the vogue pick to be in the final. I know that Elliot Friedman reported on the weekend that they are looking for some scoring help, which is surprising, especially a right winger.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Isn't that unbelievable? Well, and this is the thing. They're looking for a right winger, because now they put Draisaitl comes back from the injury. They put him on the right side with Maroon and McDavid. Right. I don't think that they want to have Draisaitl playing on the wing. They want Draisaitl, especially making $8.5 million. They want Draisaitl being the number 2 center and taking a little heat off of McDavid, because Kevin, what teams have been doing to Edmonton is they've been more physical with McDavid. They've been really trying to shut him down, which is an adventure in and of itself. But there's nothing else there right now that's scaring other teams other than McDavid.
Yeah, isn't it ironic? They plug a hole in defense, by trading away Taylor Hall, and now they need scoring. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of issues there. Like, they just haven't performed at the level that we would have expected, and I was among those that sort of viewed them as that they had sort of crossed over, and now they were ready to. I thought they were going to. I thought they were going to win the division. I really did. I just thought the injuries that the Ducks had at the start would, just be enough to give the Oilers an edge. But they've just been out of sync. At the beginning, Talbot wasn't very good, and then Talbot was fine, and then they didn't get any scoring. Even Connor McDavid had a little, hiccup. I hesitate to say that he would be in a slump, but he did score for a few games. So and they need him because their secondary scoring wasn't very strong. So. There's a lot. I still like that team, but I could see them adding a score, just because I think they realize, as they've watched this team, that that there's too much of a heavy concentration. Although, is it really going to change? Like, if you add someone to that second line, do they suddenly say, "Oh boy, we got to move some people"? No, you're still going to attack Connor McDavid, because if you stop the Oilers, you're going to stop Connor McDavid.
Well, here's the weird thing. When Draisaitl's come back, now they're sitting Yamamoto. Yamamoto's got the same amount of points as Ryan Strome in less games. Why isn't Ryan Strome sitting? Like, that's
yeah. I was not a big. I thought they should have gotten more for Eberle. Eberle, he just got his first goal, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So he hasn't lived it up either, but.
Yeah, UC Jokinen's been an abject failure. 1.9 games. I mean, not that we were expecting a lot.
Well,
but again,
they've been using Ryan Strome. Ryan Strome was a center in junior. They've been using Ryan Strome as a center on the third line a little bit, and that's sort of. I mean, he made the conversion to winger when he was with the Islanders. So in a way, they're playing him a little bit out of position, and everybody thought that they were going to put him with McDavid, but that's just not Todd McClellan's plan. But I mean, it's clear that they ideally would like to move Draisaitl to center to take a little bit of the heat. Because, I mean, obviously in the playoffs, when Draisaitl was playing on the second line and McDavid was being shut down by, either San Jose or Anaheim, Draisaitl was the one making the other teams pay. So I really think they want to have him playing up the middle.
But here's the thing. You know what's killing them? Again, you look at their scoring on defense, and it is non-existent. Klefbom has 2 points. Adam Larson's got 2 goals. Yeah. That's it. And we're not expecting a lot of points from Larson. At least I'm not. I know some other people were getting a little more optimistic because last year he put up some points. I mean, they're not getting anything from their defensemen at all in as far as offense goes. When Chris Russell is one of your better offensive defensemen, you're in trouble. And he is at 4 points. He really is.
Yeah. Finally, the Carolina Hurricanes situation continues to get a little bit cloudy. It was reported by Ken Campbell, the Hockey News, that the negotiating between Peter Kermanos and Greenberg, I believe his name is, the former he was part owner of the Texas Rangers, has hit a snag because Greenberg can't put together the $500 million necessary to buy the club. Kevin, Carolina is constantly so far this season. If you watch a game during the middle of the week, there's like 7,500 fans in the stands. I mean, they're a good team. They're an up and coming team. I think the on ice product is not the problem. It just seems that getting an owner that will keep them in Carolina might be the problem. And we know that there is a brand new building waiting in Quebec City. I mean, this isn't.
Yeah, not a chance. The team's not moving. Here's an unknown fact about the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay,
they were profitable last season.
Okay,
they were profitable.
They're 31st in attendance, though. They are.
Yeah, they are. I know. I get it. But I think they feel like if the team, we all saw what that franchise was like when they won the Cup. Like it was just a fun place to go. Like, other than Nashville, which is in a category by itself, I don't remember a fan base having more fun with a trip to the finals than Carolina did. I mean, that was tailgating. It was like going to a college football game.
Oh, it's fun. I agree. It's a great atmosphere.
But you got to win in Carolina. You got to win. And they had not made the playoffs. They've been a disaster. So, and Ronnie Francis is doing a good job there. So this is what I would say about that. 2 things. One, Bettman does not want to move a franchise. That's clear. He did it. He did it with Winnipeg, but to him, he viewed that as special circumstances. 2, this team is on the rise, and I think they believe that Ron Francis knows what he's doing. So I think that plays into it as well for them not being overly concerned, because they feel the fans will come back if they do that. And 3, I've never been convinced that Karmanos was totally serious about selling the team.
Okay.
I think it's sort of, he's a hockey guy. Like he likes, owning his hockey team. He's been involved in hockey his whole life. And I think, he sort of wanted to sell the team, but be able to run it, to be involved. And, we all know that doesn't work. So I don't see them going to Quebec. I could maybe be shocked by that, but I just don't see that they want to move this team. I know people who have talked about buying that team have been told it can't be moved. So
okay. Here's the thing, though. We still have the usual suspects as the worst in attendance. 28th Arizona, 29th Florida, 30th Islanders, 31st Carolina. Like, it's just – now Carolina is probably the more odd one than anybody. But, again, like, when do these teams get better with attendance, Kev? There's always going to be the worst teams in attendance in any league.
Right.
That's a fact. But these guys are pretty low.
They shouldn't be that low. Like, it would be fine if Carolina and Arizona were last every year in attendance, as long as they were at 16 or 15,
Right.
Or 18. But, it is a problem. But I think in terms of the competitiveness, it's a greater problem in Arizona than it is in Carolina. I think we all think Carolina's turning the corner. Now, let's put it this way.
Playing-wise, they are. They're 4-4-2. They have a good young team.
Yeah. Well, they do have a good young team, but I think in Carolina you got to be winning consistently. So we'll see, what happens there. But at some point, some owner may come in and just want to own a team and give the $500 million. And can you fault Peter Karmanos for wanting $500 million?
No, not, especially with Vegas.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's the bottom line. Is his franchise with some of the players he already has worth less than, especially when it's profitable. So if it's profitable with this attendance, imagine if they can fill the house. So
there are 8 games.
Hold on. Here's my one thing though, and this is a weird thing for leagues. So we've all heard that the Alibaba CEO is going to buy 49% of the Brooklyn Nets. That money is worth his stake is going to be about $2.3 billion as far as like the evaluation with the team. But I bet you he's putting up more than $500 million. Like, why wouldn't a guy like that, Kev, buy a team and say, hey, in Quebec, I can't lose? Like, instead, he's buying into the Brooklyn Nets, even though it's in New York. They do lose all the time.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, you have to have a passion for the sport. I mean, a lot of the guys who buy, I shouldn't say guys, a lot of the people who buy sports teams do it because they want to be involved with a specific team, and maybe hockey teams are an acquired taste for some potential owners. So
8 games in the NHL tonight. I think the best matchup is the 9-1-1 LA Kings against the 9-2-1 St. Louis Blues. Tampa Bay, who is fulfilling Russ and my prophecy, and probably yours, Kevin, of being coming back after a bad year. They're playing the Florida Panthers. Thought Toronto was going that division. The Montreal Canadiens played the Ottawa Senators. No doubt that the Ottawa Senators would like to stick a knife in the back of the Montreal Canadiens. And
looks like Turris is still out though with an viral infection, so that'll help Montreal a little bit.
And Patrick Marleau makes his return to San Jose tonight.
That's a pretty big deal.
After 19 seasons in San Jose, he returns with the Maple Leafs to play the Sharks. I'm sure it'll probably be an emotional night in San Jose for Marleau and his family. I know they're all there, but
video tribute, the whole 9.
Yeah, so good. It will be a good night. And Kev, thank you for joining the show.
Yeah, really pleasure.
For Russ Cohen, Michael Lagello, thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.